Hello, and welcome to the DIY Photo Organizing podcast, focusing on topics to help you with your photo management. I'm Chantal from Photos in Order.
And I'm Fiona from Photo Helper. And today we are thrilled to chat with our guest, who is no less than the very first certified photo organizer in Australia, Mara Morrison from the Filing Fairies. Hi, Mara, and welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, ladies. No
Hello.
problem.
Hello,
Thanks for
hello.
having me.
You're most welcome. It's a pleasure. So, Mara, let's just jump straight in. We've got lots of fun things and topics and questions for you. But if we can start, if you could just tell us and our lovely listeners just a little bit about how you got started in this awesome industry of photo organising.
Well, it's coming up to 7 years ago that I got started. I'd always had an interest in looking after my own photos, and I actually got a little bit of a slap on the wrist at a workplace where I was working for spending some time in my lunch break. It was my lunch break, admittedly, but I got caught downloading photos from Facebook because you weren't meant to use Facebook in the workplace 7 years ago. You never were. You're probably still not meant to, but I got a little bit of a slap on the wrist, and it really put me off. Being employed because it was
Yep.
my lunch hour and I thought it was fair enough. I should have been able to do that. Basically, I was just rushing. There was a $5 photo book sale and I was rushing to get it done before the sale ended because back then they didn't do vouchers the way that they do now where you can, buy a voucher in a sale and they'll last for 6 months. Back then you had to just submit your book. And so I was in this mad rush because I wanted to get this great sale for my photo book and I got in trouble. But so it really made me stop and look at, my current work life balance and, maybe there was something that I could do is, maybe I could turn my passion to good and not evil, I guess, because I got in trouble. So I started thinking about how I could work with photos and photo books and came up with this idea that I was going to start a business and I was going to do something with it. And I was Googling business names, like trying to come up with a good name for the business. And whilst I was doing that, I actually came across the Association of Personal Photo Organisers, the organisation that we're all members of. So I discovered APO, and basically the rest was history.
Oh, fantastic. That's amazing. And what a journey, 7 years, because you were, I mean, the first photo organizer in the whole of Australia. I mean, that's a big pond to kind of get your head around. And such, for a niche industry that we're in, it's huge, really, the different areas and things. How was it starting out without that sort of reference point to start a business without someone having forged the way ahead of time? What did you do? How did you go about that?
So APO was a huge help in that respect. I'd been around, friends and family who'd started small businesses before. So the business side of it wasn't too much of a struggle for me. And I have a strong admin background as well. So the business side was okay. I did, straight up, once I started investigating what was involved in photo organising, realise that there were certain elements that I was going to need help with, and to fill the gaps in my own skills was why I approached Jo, my business partner, because I knew her digital IT type skills were so much stronger than my own, and that what I couldn't do, that she was going to be able to do, and that we'd make a perfect partnership. So I approached Jo. She was on maternity leave and said, look,
Fantastic.
I think you're probably thinking about coming back to work pretty soon. How about you come back and start a business with me?
Fabulous.
And we just sort of muddled our way through it together. But APO definitely was a huge help. They've got so many resources to help us keep on track, as you would know yourselves.
Absolutely. And I think, because a lot of our, the listeners that sort of tune into the podcast are doing a lot of this stuff themselves. and they're looking for some direction or just some motivation and a whole range of different reasons. But there are some great resources out there because this is becoming more and more an area that people are just becoming overwhelmed with, because there's so many different options and um, combinations of what they have, different types of phones, different types of computers, different types of software that they've tried to organize their photos in, and they're stuck in, software somewhere, and different things. It can be very overwhelming. So resources like, the APO organization, and resources like, even a lot of the blogs that you write and different things. There's a lot of things out there now for people to be able to try and just get a bit of an idea of where to start with this.
Absolutely. I mean, even in that 7 years, we've seen a lot of changes in the technology and the software, and it is hard, even for us as professionals, to keep on top of all of those changes. I remember back when we started and we were first working on Macs, iPhoto was still the software on Apple Mac, and that's
Yeah.
changed in our short business lifespan. It's already changed. Google's had changes. There's things that have gone completely, disappeared. The technology changes are so rapid, and it is hard for people to keep on top of, even
Yeah.
professionals.
Exactly. Which brings us to a perfect point for me to ask you a question. So, with so much out there and all these different things, if you can share, from your business experience and all of the experience you've got within the industry and with clients, for the listeners, what the ABCs are of photo organizing, from your experience and perspective, and just sort of bring some clarity around, some understanding of that for people that are wanting to try to tackle their photos.
Okay, I mean that's a huge question, but I'll
I
give it a go.
know.
So the
Okay.
ABCs is can be you can when it comes to tackling your photos. Most people that we work with, they're tackling a historical bunch of photos, and when I say that, I mean memorabilia, physical photos, old prints and negatives and slides and all that kind of thing. And they've inherited them, or they're their own from their childhood, so they're trying to apply some kind of process to those. And then
Hmm.
there's the other side of trying to apply ABCs to digital photos.
Yeah.
The ABCs itself is actually an industry standard. It's an acronym, and it's
Yep.
the association came up with that, and all the photo organisers that I've come across, they all use it. And it's quite simply that when you're working and on sorting your photos, that you use the process of categorizing them into ABCs. So A is for album, and ultimately they're the ones that they're the print worthy, best of the best. Your A photos would go in an album. You'd actually do something with those photos.
Hmm.
B photos, the B stands for box. So when it comes to physical photos, you'd be putting them aside in a box. They don't necessarily need to be on display. In the digital world, you can still apply that as well and just put them in a folder.
Hmm.
And then C is because the ABCs is an American acronym. The C is for can, as in trash can, or just delete them. So that when you're going through your photos, the one thing you can do as you're sorting them, you can put them in the can. And then the other thing I think for us the most important one is people quite often forget that the ABCs, when you write that down, it actually has an apostrophe S. And for us, the S is the most important thing of all, because the S is for storytelling. And whether you're sorting your photos physically or digitally, you need to sort with a story in mind and keep them with a story in mind, and make records of what those stories are, because after all, that's kind of why we're doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I'd love to explore that more because storytelling is really your heart. It's your passion for doing what you do. Can you tell us, what does that mean to you? So, storytelling, what does that mean to you, and how do you help your clients to do that?
So for us, the storytelling element is the most important part, or for me personally, it's definitely my passion. It's about capturing the information that simply looking at a photo can't tell you. So for example, and I use this example when I'm teaching, is I'll show people a photo of my kids in school uniform. And if you were to look at that photo, you go, oh, look, the kids are at school. And you'd be like, okay. That photo could basically span 13 years. There's no story or significance detailed in that, just by looking at it. There's no story there. So,
Yep.
and when I show this particular photo in my classes, it's one in particular. It's where my youngest, and she's all dressed in her school uniform, and she looked very young. So people, I guess, if they're looking at it, could estimate that she was quite young and try and have a stab at when it was to get some information about it. But basically they would be guessing. And so the real story behind that photo was that she actually wasn't due to go to school to the following week. It was her big brother's first day of school. And so that's a sweet little story about how keen my little girl was to go to school, that she got dressed and she went to school with her brother a week early and stood there in her school uniform and went to the school assembly and stood up next to the teachers and everything, because she was just so dead keen to go. Because, you know, everyone was making a big deal about her brother's first day at school and taking photos of him, and she didn't want to be left out. So there's this whole story that you don't see that when you just look at the photo.
Yeah.
That story might come to my mind, but it doesn't come to the mind of anyone else who's looking at it. So the storytelling element is the importance of actually capturing those stories, and we help our clients do it in a couple of different ways. So
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. If I'm listening to this and I'm thinking that sounds great, how should I do that? So yeah, how do you sort of work that practically?
practically, when we're working with our clients, we do it a couple of ways. So when we're scanning, for example, when we're helping a client digitize old photos, we make sure that we close the loop and apply information to the digital files. So after we've scanned the photo, now the print itself, it probably, or quite if we're lucky, will have something written on the back. The story will be there, but you want to actually also apply that story to a digital file. So we actually teach people to do this, or we'll do it for them. We'll apply some real metadata to the digital file. So say it was a photo taken in 1973, we'll actually change the date on the digital file to make it 1973, and we will add file names, and we'll use consistent methods. We use the W's, the when, where, who, what, why in our file names. And so we'll get that information as much as we can. So we teach people to do that when they're scanning. We also teach them to do it with their digital photos as well. Other ways we teach with the story, and of course a lot of stories to do with longevity and legacy, is the importance of using proper names. So instead of saying mum, you can say their real name, or instead of saying Nana, you can say, Nana June, or, Nana Sal, or, actually put real names into your information. You can still call them Nana, but put both names in there, and we teach people to do that. And I had one client, she had 3 daughters, and her daughters' names were Caroline, Elizabeth, and Samantha, or something like that. But all those names, they were long names. And so when she was starting to try and do some digital organising of her own, she had named those daughters Sammy, Sam, Sar, Car, Caro, Betty, Beth,
Australian
Lizzie, all the different variations. So there was literally about 9 different variations of 3 people. And there was no consistency at all. So we teach the importance of, yes, those nicknames are part of the story, but that's not going to help you when you're trying to find people or search for people longer term. And then really probably the one that we sort of focus down on the most is when you're making photo books, to use narrative captions, put paragraphs in there. Don't just, so you've got a photo book and you've put a photo of you, I don't know, riding a camel. You don't put the caption, "me on camel," because that's quite obvious. Anyone looking at the photo or looking at the photo book can tell that that's you riding a camel.
Yep.
But you want to actually put in, like the story of my daughter going to the school. Like, you want to put in, where were you when you were riding the camel? Was there, the desert sand stinging your eyes? And could you actually get up on the camel? How many attempts did it take you to get up on the camel? Like, add something a bit more interesting and colourful and significant to your photos when you're making your photo books. So whether it's a travel book or annual book or anything, put the stories in there.
I think that's fabulous, Mara, because really at the end of the day, you have to look at the heart of the reason why someone would take a photo in the first place. And that's where that's captured. The story is in that reason. And so they're there. Either they're sharing a moment, it's a funny event, it's capturing something which is, an emotional time for someone, um, or it's just a meal that they love, whatever the reason. But maybe that meal that they've loved, that they've taken a photo of, does have a story behind it, the hours of labor, the burnt roast, the whatever it was, to get you to that point. Or, it was the meal that they shared with someone before they went on a relocated to another country or something like that. And there's always a story behind that. And I think it's so easy to take photos and quickly just snap, snap, snap. And you know um how do you like, what sort of, just getting again back to a practical way, what do you say, what advice would you give as far as the actual capturing of that information? Where do people go to put that information in? What sort of a process do they do, or software, or how do you advise people on that?
Yeah, so there's any number of different ways that you can do it. I personally like to work with a journaling app, and it's called the Legacy of Love app. And I actually do my story capturing on a month-to-month basis at the same time that I do my digital photo management. So I just make it part of my process of downloading my photos from devices, gathering them all together, deleting the ones I don't need, renaming the files. And then I sort of take that extra step, is that I'll actually sit down and make some journal notes. So I'm not only renaming the files with the detailed information, but I'm actually also making a journal, and I do it once a month. And so I make a journal entry of all the important, interesting things that happened during the previous month. So actually, it's quite early in February right now, so I just did it for January. I sat there and wrote my little
So
story.
how
This
long
is
did
what
that
happened in
take you?
January.
How long did that take you, Mara? So what sort of a time frame, just on average, would that have taken,
It
say?
My monthly process very rarely takes me more than half an hour.
Wow.
So I can
Fabulous.
do my monthly gathering of all my photos and organizing of all my photos, backing them all up, renaming them all, and jotting down a few notes. Like, sometimes it's just bullet points of, we did this and it was great, or this is how I felt, or all of those things. And I can do it, half an hour if we did heaps of things.
So Mara, is that the journaling, is that actually happening, like is that handwritten like in a notebook, or do you add that digitally to your photo files in the comments or description?
So it's a little bit of both. So if I will use the when, where, who, what, why method of naming my photos. So for example, it's actually my son's 11th birthday today. So when it comes
Oh, happy
time
birthday.
to name the photos that I'll take today, I'll do it all in a batch. I might take
Yeah.
half a dozen photos, or end up keeping. I'll probably take a lot more than half a dozen, but I'll only keep half a dozen. And I will
Good.
rename them with the when, where, who, what, why. And it's pretty obvious. The when was the date, the where was where are we going to celebrate, and the who's in the pictures, and the why is it's Jacob's 11th birthday.
Yeah.
So I'll actually put that kind of short form information in the file name, which is attached to it digitally forever. But then in terms of journaling, if anything crazy happens at the party this afternoon, I might write a little story about that. And I do that and I'll do it at the end of the month in that app. I'll actually type it. But if you prefer, you could use a diary. Like I talk to my older clients who want to work on this same kind of process. They just want to pick up a pen and write it in their diary at the end of each month to gather their thoughts. And this is all with the longer view of putting a annual family photo book together.
Yes. That will be a really quick process for you then.
At the beginning of next year, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So at the beginning of next year, I'll have done all the work 12 times during this year, so that when it comes time to throwing my book together, it's quite a simple process because I've already done the stuff. And it's not to do for me, it's not to do with time efficiency and memory. Like sometimes I couldn't even remember what I did last week. I'd like to capture the story while it's fresh in my mind, but it also saves me a heap of time. Sitting down to make an annual photo book is a hugely overwhelming task if you've got to deal with 3,000 or 4,000 photos, all these memories slamming at you, and by doing it, you're chipping away at this bit by bit. And I actually wrote a blog about this month because I was doing it. So I put it in my blog. So if anyone wants to read a bit more about it, they can read that, how I do it.
Can you say the name of the app again that you're using?
So I can give you the link for that one as well.
Yes,
so
please.
It's called the Legacy of Love app, and you can do it from your desktop, or you can actually do it from your phone as well. So you can just do it as you go, and you can load photos to it. You can talk to it, like you can record a video. So if you don't want to write your notes, you could, record the notes.
Fantastic. The thing I love about that, Mara, is that, when you're writing down those memories, either if it's, next week after the birthday party of today, or if it's, the day or the night or whenever it is, but little chunks of time, because if you're looking at like the storybook, if you were thinking of the actual photo book that you're producing, you don't have to write sort of like a blurb or that narrative on every single photo. You're going to put, say, the 6 photos that you're capturing from today, and then the one caption, or the, sort of however you lay it out, but you've captured that moment, rather than, I think, if you've got 6 photos, you have to think of 6 captions, and it can get overwhelming, and how do you start? So you just sort of taking it with, again, which is one of the things that we talk about in our 5 golden rules, is to look at the why. And when you know clearly what you're producing at the end, it's so much easier for people then to be able to go in and do these types of things in, a few times throughout the month, or at the end of the event, or just at the end of the month. But then they know, what they're producing, and so they can get a lot richer and concise sort of a collection of thoughts. And it doesn't have to be so overwhelming.
Absolutely, I agree. I think that if I wasn't going to be producing an annual family photo book each year, I'm not sure that I would be very motivated to add all this information or do all this journaling, because I know my why. My why is I love making those books each year. I love people picking them up. I love people looking at them. Like today, when the family comes over for Jacob's birthday, I'll have out his the book that I made for his first year. So people love to look at them. It's
That's
like, oh,
great.
that's when that was when I was 1, and that that was my first birthday party. Or he'll try and tell me he remembers. I'm like, sweetheart, you were 1. I don't think you remember it, but maybe he does. Like he's got these photo prompts. He's got this. He can now read. He can read the story of what happened for his first birthday. We got rained out. We had to change venues. Like he never know what he might remember, and
Yeah.
he'll. If the family they love looking at them, and that's my why, and I am willing to invest that time each month because the why is so important to me, and it's those stories. It's not just the photos; it's the stories that goes with them.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So, would you be able to share, because just a bit of an idea. So, if someone was sitting down to the end of their month, and we're early Feb, so we've had the month of January. What are some tips that you could give people if they were going to start to, they've been inspired by your storytelling ideas and just, that this is really possible for them? What are some tips that you could say that they could start thinking about as to make that process easier for them when they come to doing that, if they were going to do that monthly as well?
So I would suggest that it just becomes another step of your monthly photo management, that you're looking at the backup process that we all as photo organisers encourage people to do, is that let's cull out the 30 or 40 photos I took from the birthday and only make it half a dozen or a dozen. Do that, just include it in the process, and just make it an extra step. So the storytelling can then come naturally. You're doing it, you're culling the photos out, you're picking the best ones. I actually go to the extent of favoriting my favorites for each month. I'm on a
Okay.
PC, so I use the 5-star. I'll just put a 5-star, and when you're using star ratings, you can make those stars mean anything. But for me, 5 stars means that I've already selected the photos that I want to consider to have in my photo book when I make it. So I've actually already narrowed down which
Fabulous.
my favorite ones are, and then I've spent that time journaling. I just pull it up on the computer and I type some notes out and record. And of course, journaling is very personal. You can write bullet points. You can write long pages and pages of how you feel and your innermost thoughts, or
Yeah.
you can record. Great for little kids, you can record things they might have said, like little quotes to put
Yes.
in, anything that's memorable, that you think of that why, and think of the legacy that you want to leave, and what people might like to read, what might be funny or enjoyable to read later
Mm,
on, when
yeah.
they look at it years later at their 18th birthday party.
Yeah, exactly. That's fabulous. Um, my goodness, so many good bits and pieces and tips for us, Mara. Thank you so much. Um, so, Chantal, have you got any other burning questions that you'd like to ask Mara as well before we ask her a final question?
Don't think so. There's heaps of questions, but no burning ones, I think. We should possibly, maybe have another episode.
I know we could, we
But I
could.
really like the focus on the storytelling because we never really talked about that so far, I think.
Yeah, it talks about
Um,
our why, but
yes,
this just gives a lot more a framework around exactly that,
yeah,
where, how that works in a very practical way, as an
yeah.
example.
And you've definitely inspired me personally because I'm not a journaler at all. I try it throughout my life. You've got these phases like, okay, I'll start a journal now, and then you write in it for 3 days and you don't touch it for the rest of the year. That's, and I'm very minimalistic also with my photo books. Oftentimes, I wouldn't write a whole lot of stories to go with it. I'm like a bit simplistic. I like it minimal. I'm not a scrapbooker. I don't like to decorate too much, and but you've actually really inspired me to give that a go, and I like your method, your approach, because that sounds totally feasible. And I do the same thing, on a monthly regular basis. So it doesn't add that much work really.
Yeah, it's just an extra step, just one more step. And it's so much easier to think about doing it monthly when you're already in a process, rather than it's not daily. I could never journal daily. And even sometimes monthly gets a bit hard. If I miss one
Yes.
month, or, I'm not, I can always do 2 months together.
Yeah.
That's still easier than doing the whole year.
Yeah.
And as you say, we forget so quickly, we don't know
Yep.
what we've done last week. Life is busy, so much
Yes.
happens, yeah, so I'm
Yeah.
inspired. Thanks for
That's
sharing.
good. You're going to get January up to date now, Chantal.
Yes. Oh, I am actually, I am.
Oh, that's fabulous. Mara, I did just want to ask, one of the things you mentioned was some classes that you do. Um, I'm just really keen. I know that you're in Sydney and we're in Melbourne, and people are listening, from sort of not just Australia, but all over the place, scattered around.
Yes.
But as far as what, how people could find you and what you offer and how you sort of can help, or I know your blogs are a great resource for people, so we'll definitely encourage people to go and check them out and have a good look through. There's great tips and lots of wisdom and years of experience that you've had within this industry. um, but with the classes and things that you do, what sort of ways could we, direct people through to you, or how they can find you, or and maybe work with you, personally?
Sure. Well, like I said, we're in Sydney and we're a partnership. So Joe and myself, we do cover all the different aspects of photo organising, because we see that the work we do of scanning and digital organising as a natural prelude to the creating of photo books. So we are happy to educate people on that, and we can do coaching one-on-one. We do coaching in small groups. People invite us to speak to their ladies groups or probus groups and all that kind of thing. So we're happy to do presentations if people have a small group that they want us to present to. We do a local college class every term that they have. We do 2 classes there every term, but mainly just come to our website and check us out and get in contact with us there, and we'll happy to have a chat with them and see how they'd like to work with us. So, we like doing all the different things, but yeah, our favorite, probably my all-time favorite thing to do is transform old prints into milestone books. I love weddings. I love doing weddings. We do like anniversaries. That's probably my favorite. Like doing a 40th or a 50th wedding anniversary and taking really old wedding prints and turning them into a modern digital photo book.
Beautiful.
So, what's your website, Mara?
So we are the filingfairies.com.au.
Okay, cool.
Fabulous. That's great. Mara, thank you so much for being our guest today. It really has been a joy to have you with us, and for sharing your wisdom and your experience and just your heart for storytelling. It really has been a pleasure to have you here. So we'll pop all those links in the show notes. And just for our listeners, please don't hesitate. Leave us a review. Get in touch with Mara and Joe. And as always, pop some questions in on the Facebook page or email us directly via the social media channels there. So I'm Fiona from Photo Helper.
And I'm Chantal from Photos in Order.
And thank you again, Mara.
Thanks,
No
Mara.
problem. Thanks, ladies.
All right.
See
See you then.
you. Bye.